Hey, thanks for dropping by and checking out this message. These lessons come from our Sunday gatherings at Victory Christian Church in Franklin, Indiana. Our 5th through 8th graders meet at 9 or 10:30 a.m. and our high schoolers meet from 6 to 8 p.m. If you find that this content brings value to your life, then please consider subscribing and hitting that bell so that you can be notified when we upload our next message. Our hope is that this video brings more clarity into your life as to who God is and what He wants for you in light of who Jesus is and what He's done for you. Enjoy and have a great day.
Morning, everybody. How you doing? Good. So, I want you to think, when was the last time you had an argument? Like, it could be with your parents, it could be with a sibling, maybe it was your best friend. But think about the last time you had an argument. Here's a little bit of a statistic for you. They did a study and found that most families spend about 49 minutes a day arguing. That seems a little crazy, right? But then there's some of you in the audience that are like, I think they're a little short. Like, I don't know if I can think of times where we're just not arguing. And that's just with your family, right? 49 minutes a day, that's just with your family. Then you think about your friends, your other students at school, your teachers. The reason for a fight or the outcome of the disagreement could be different, but if you really think about it, your feelings during that fight were probably something along the lines of, well, of course, I'm right, or I'm better, or like, I know what's right, I know better than that other person. That really, at the end of the day, that's what every argument comes down to, right? I know better, I'm better than this other person. But that's hard to admit, right? That's hard to think about when you sit down and think. You're like, I don't want to. No, that's not what it is. But really, it is, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm the same way. Most of the arguments that I have with my wife are because I think I know a better way of doing something, and she doesn't listen. At the end of the day, that's pretty much all of our arguments. It's she does something one way, I do something the other way, and I think my way is better, so I don't back down. And that's not the best way to resolve conflict, especially in a marriage. But that's how most of our fights start, is I think I know a better way, she does it a different way, and of course, my way is better. Usually by the end of the fight, usually we don't even fight that much anymore. We have figured out good ways of resolving that conflict without a fight. But, like, you see what I mean? Like, you think about those fights, you think about, I know better, and that's why I'm right. Most of the fallouts in our relationships are due to this reason. They change the way we know what we don't know. We're smart and they're not, right? Now, we'll never say that out loud, but that thought can really motivate our actions. It can motivate the way that we see ourselves. It motivates the way that we see the world. We start to act as if we deserve better. Maybe you think you're the best player on the team, so you should be captain. Or you're the best flutist, so you should be first chair. Or maybe it's just like you know all the right answers in class, so you should get that recognition. Or you're a better friend in your friend group to this person, so they need to show more attention to you. Like, there should be more deference to what you want to do because you're the better friend, right? And none of those sound super great when you say them out loud. And like, even if we are in fact better at something, There's a part of us that knows, like, using that as the motivation for something, it doesn't feel right, right? Anytime we feel like we're better than someone, it kind of reveals an issue with our own character, right? It shows something about the way that we see ourselves and the way that we see others that we want to change, and we should want to change that. In this series, we've looked at the different stories that Jesus has told, the parables, and the one we're going to talk about today, it comes out of the book of Luke, which, if any of you guys have been here before when I've spoken, big fan of Luke. Luke is probably my favorite of the Gospels. I don't know what it is about the book of Luke, but I love the book of Luke. I love the story of the book of Luke. He was a doctor. He gathered all this information about Jesus. He made sure everything was point for point for point. This is what happened. And I just love the book of Luke. But, sorry, that's my fangirl moment. So in this parable, actually, Jesus was at a dinner party when he told this parable. It's a parable about a dinner party, and he was actually at a party for an honored person. Like this guy had gathered up all these people. He wanted to have this really nice dinner, and in that culture, the closer you sat to the head of the table, the closer you sat to the host of the party, the more important you were, right? That's how it was kind of an unspoken but very well understood degree of status. If you were sitting next to the person who was hosting the party, they considered you a very close friend. They considered you a very honorable guest. So anytime there was a dinner party, the most distinguished guests would always be sitting closest to the host. So in Luke 14:8, 8 through 11, Jesus tells this parable. He says, "When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, 'Give this person your seat.' Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, 'Friend, move up to a better place.' Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Okay, so I'm going to break down with a little bit of a visual here. Move this out of the way. Okay, so how many of you guys are fans of Billie Eilish? Or even know who Billie Eilish is? Okay, so I definitely picked the wrong celebrity. All right, so imagine that Billie Eilish or Chris Evans or who are some other, Richie something, I don't know, there's some rapper that I don't recognize, but one of my cousins was like, "Oh yeah, he's really awesome." It's like, I don't even know who that is. But okay, so imagine that Billie Eilish is hosting a dinner party, right? And the most distinguished guest would be the one sitting right here. So of course, when I get to the party, I'm going to take this seat right here. This is going to be my seat. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to be like, "Hey Billie, how you doing?" Because that's where I deserve to be, right? But then like Little Nas or Chris Evans or somebody else who clearly deserves that seat more than me shows up. So then they have to come to me and say, "Hey, Lil Nas X just got here. You're going to have to move down so that he can sit next to Billie." So then I'm humiliated by all the other guests, by the fact that I have to move all the way down here, and now I'm sitting way over here, and like all those people got to see that I'm not really as esteemed as I thought I was. But instead, had I come into the party and I still see Billie is sitting at the end of the table, I go ahead and I say, "You know what? I'm gonna take my seat down here and enjoy the party." But then she looks down and she sees that I'm sitting all the way over here. She's like, hey, Sam, like, I invited you. I want to make sure that you're here, you're having a good time. So she invites me to sit a little bit closer, right? And then even if I'm not sitting at the front of the table, all those people have gotten to see that she does hold me in esteem. She does care for my position. She does care for my opinions. And the esteem that is shown by moving me from that last place, all the people around you, you get to be exalted by that thought. You get to be shown that attention. So that's what Jesus was trying to say with this parable, right? In that if you bring yourself at the very beginning to say, you know what, I deserve a better place, you really run the risk of not only being seen as arrogant, but also being humiliated. Because then somebody has to come to you and say, hey, you're not actually that important, why don't you move down a little bit? But if you humble yourself before others, you have that chance of them lifting you up. And that's the point that Jesus is trying to get across, is in every interaction we do, we should be approaching it with that attitude of humbleness. We should attitude of humility. We should humble ourselves before others. Paul actually talks about the race to the end, and it's one of my favorite kind of illustrations of this. Jesus, obviously, he was perfect. He came to the earth, he lived without sin, he was perfect. If anybody deserved the best seat in every house that he ever walked in, it would be Jesus. But Jesus never did take that first seat. Jesus always spent every interaction with everybody, serving them and humbling themselves before them. And he approached every person as, I am here to serve you. And like I said, Paul puts it a really cool way where it's like the race to the end. It's like in all of our interactions with our Christian brothers, we should all be rushing to serve them. So the biggest problem we should ever have as Christians is who is going to humble themselves enough to allow the other person to serve them. It sounds like a really weird kind of problem, but if our biggest problem is who's the least selfish person there, I think we have a pretty good thing going. If everybody is rushing to serve and humble themselves before the world, before their brothers and sisters, the world would be a little bit better place, because nobody would be reaching for that thing that they think they deserve and then pushing all those other people down. You hear the Oscar speeches, it's like, man, I just want to thank my mom, my dad, I want to thank God, like all those, the very hollow acceptance speeches at like the Academy Awards or the Oscars. And I would love for one person just one day to just be completely honest and be like, I just want to thank all the little people that I stepped on to get here, right? You should never... Anyway, to bring it back, humility. Jesus deserved every accolade that could ever be laid upon him, but he lived his life in service of others. And that's the story that he's telling here, is humble yourselves before everyone in all things, because not only are you able then to serve, but you have that opportunity to be lifted up by, you can really see the exaltation that people have in having you around. So as we break off into our small groups today, as we go through this week, just think about what's one way that I can humble myself this week and really practice that humility that Jesus had, that Luke talks about, that Paul talks about. What's one way that I can practice humility? I'm going to close in a word of prayer. We'll break off into our small groups.
Hey, hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed so you're notified when we upload future videos. Have a great day.